Hello. Thank you, David. It's always a pleasure to sort of have a giant in the industry and to introduce yourself. So very grateful for that. I don't know if you guys are ready, but we have about 300 slides to go over. So take your shoes off, relax, and we'll just get right into it. So thanks for having us. We are Creative Session, but like David has said, we are now known as the Brothers. And it's pretty hard to get a job independently now because we're tied together so often. So if you're online hearing this, I want a separation. But we'll get through this pretty quickly because we still have 299 more slides to go. But Anna and I from Portland, actually alumni at CTA, and to understand what we do and sort of break up the disciplines that we focus on, we could break it into these kind of three pillars here. Creative Session is pretty obvious. It's the industrial design side. We mainly focus on branding, industrial design, and more so nowadays marketing as well, because those things are just, they go hand in hand and they complement each other.
It's something we started here at CCA when we were going to school too. So.
Yeah. Playground is where we're at now. It's on the investing side. It's a different type of design studio, and we'll get into that as we get into the deck. And then lastly, Design Under the Influence is a show because, similar to David and everyone here in the front row, Ian, it's a way to bring back all the sort of talent that we've grown to learn from and worked with, and to bring them onto a show and have a drink and talk about design. And we'll get into that as well.
Often being a jack of all trades is frowned upon, but that's something Hoang and I both value. A lot of our friends or peers in the industry, they often encourage us to focus on one thing and do it really well. But especially in this day and age and in this climate, we're in text threads where companies are laying off and people are getting let go, and it's so tough to find a job, really. Often it's good to be adaptable. It's good to jump around and blend in and be able to flex your creative muscles and help out where you can. The worst enemy is being stagnant. So for us, our whole career has been industrial design, but we continue to move, continue to have fun. And this is an example of fun.
I don't know if you guys seen this already, but we like to do projects where we troll people. And this was one of the projects where we made Supreme Oreo cookies and posted it, showed the whole process of how to make it. And eventually Supreme sent us a cease and desist, and took down the video. But it's sort of this captures the ethos of what we like to do, which is like bring in design, bring in sort of this clever storytelling, but let's just have fun that while we're doing it. So we wanted to show that and kind of build off of that. More traditional route. These are some of the studios and companies that we've worked with in the past. And I would say, if we look at this list right now and sort of the three pillars we talked about, Creative Session was that, or is that, and we spent a lot of time focusing on building like true product, like hardware, consumer electronics that were culturally sort of impactful. It has sort of cultural relevance, and we spent a lot of time building these devices. And here are some of the examples of them. And I think as we move and transition into Playground, we've shifted our mindset around how do we think about product in a bigger way, in a more impactful way, in terms of storytelling, in terms of product design, but like how do we think of the impact as far as like sustainability, decarbonization, like those types of things, and how do we build at scale? So the last few slides that you have seen is the breadth of things like branding, things like graphic design, things like web product design and industrial design. And we just quickly moved through that. And so the second pillar is playground. And this is where we shift from doing things that are cultural. Hello? Oh, I just got off. Things that were culturally impactful to things to building companies that are shifting the way we think paradigms and like shift the way we operate as human beings. And we'll see those examples here in the next few slides on. We'll get into that. But to really capture that is we think about it as we partner up with these like mad scientists, and we bring these skill sets that we have, which is, you know, all the tools that we've learned here at CCA, all the tools that we've learned in the industry, and use those storytelling methods and create like impactful companies. And here are a few examples. Oh, I forgot about this slide. Actually, so just to quickly talk about how we got to Playground from Creative Session, we are actually ready to start a studio. And because we are starting a studio, we were putting out feelers, and this man right here, I don't know if anyone knows who he is, but his name is Andy Rubin. He created the T-Mobile Sidekick. Well, at first it was called Danger Sidekick. And because his goal wasn't to create a cell phone, his goal was to introduce user interface to the world. So what happened is he moved on and created Android, the operating system. And from that, he sold it to Google and was there for X amount of years. And at the same time, when he left Google, he was looking for a design team for his investment studio. And so at the investment studio, it was the same time we were thinking about starting a studio. And one of the recruiters that reached out mentioned, why don't you guys come do Creative Session for us? So that was just, you know, the perfect opportunity. And that story I could tell you at another time. It's very long, but essentially An and I he was at Astro, I was at another design studio in the Bay. Long story short, we were ignoring their emails because you're busy working with clients like Google, Samsung, and we thought we were big shit. And then the email that they sent us was, hey, we have $900 million to invest in new companies. Come work with us. I created Android, and we said, okay, let me reply.
And I think it was like a week later, we both left.
We went to interview and we left. So today there's two parts to Playground. The bank side, the venture side, is about $1.3 billion in capital to invest in startups and new ideas. And the design side, which, the studio side, has engineering team, has industrial design team, has branding team, has a marketing team. And together we invest in companies. And here's our example of a few.
And just to give you guys a snippet of each company, I'll just roll through and spend a couple of minutes on each to just give you a glimpse of sort of the things that we work on. So Velo 3D is one of the earlier investments for us at Playground, and the way we invest on a design side is we help build brand, we help build product, we help do storytelling, we help just craft the company's vision in general, and to put their technology in sort of easy to understand terms. If you imagine the manufacturing process is a very slow, very tedious process, where when you want to create a cell phone, for instance, you have to build structures, you have to build a whole set of infrastructures and processes to develop a certain device. For Velo, say you walk into a hospital, which is one of their biggest clients, you can, with a broken hip that morning, you could order a hip. By the end of the day, you could have a new titanium hip. And that's what Velo brings to the table. And they bring this technology to space, to the health industry, and various other avenues.
Just to quickly add the slide where we show the mad scientists and sort of the relationship with design. This is a true story there, right? We had a bunch of geeks building, sintering metal device, and when we first established the relationship, really it was, how do we redefine your story? And the branding aspect was to pitch the idea of like, you're the future of manufacturing, and we're manufacturing at the speed of ideas. So when you're shifting the narrative around like, I'm not a hobby device anymore, you become at scale, sort of undeniably really great. And that's beyond industrial design, that's storytelling, that's capturing a market. And these screen captures here you see are the results of that, which is like, Elon Musk uses Velo for their rockets at SpaceX, and it's integral to their production. So it's very impactful in that sense.
Similarly, today there was actually a first round of launch for Relativity, which had some hiccups, but they are relaunching this Saturday. And for them, we collaborate to build stories and branding messages and products and visuals and things like that. But the breakthrough for them is building rockets with hundreds of pieces, 1,000 instead of hundreds of thousands of pieces. And they're able to fly these rockets in days instead of years. Another one is universal hydrogen. And I think a few days ago, there was the first successful flight that happened in Seattle. Transportation sector accounts for 1/4 of our carbon emissions and 15% globally. So by 2030 in the US here, we won't be able to sell combustion cars anymore, but planes still exist. There will be electric trains, electric bikes, electric cars, and no one's looking into carbon-free flight. So Universal Hydrogen is one of those companies that 2 days ago had their first successful hydrogen flight.
So that's a big win for us, because this week was its first commercial level flight, and we can imagine this story unfolding throughout the years for shipping, for all sorts of transportation. So at Playground, we like to invest in that space too, in terms of sustainability and understanding our carbon footprint and our impact on the world.
And FarmWise is another company that is looking to offset our carbon footprint. And if we think about agriculture is the #1 cause to pollution in many #1 countries. And when it comes to farming, pesticides is one huge issue that we all deal with FarmWise, using machine learning, AI, and robotics. They are building devices that essentially kind of we're sending these devices to ride across these fields to study the field and mechanically remove weeds. So instead of spraying Roundup everywhere, we're eliminating the use of pesticides. These aren't glorious jobs, they're backbreaking jobs that no one enjoys doing. And our current solution is to spray pesticides everywhere. So with FarmWise, it's eliminating the use of pesticides by mechanically removing them with AI and automation. And IDEON, one of our last examples here, in all our pockets, we have phones, we use cars, we use laptops. All of these devices, all of these machines require ore, minerals, and different special materials. With IDEON, they are solving mining in a very special way. Currently, if we look at a mining site, it usually looks like a block of Swiss cheese. Mining companies drill hundreds, thousands of holes. And to give you an example, each hole that a mining company drills, it's upwards of $1.5 million per hole. And they're just drilling randomly until they hit a piece of ore. And with IDEON, they're using space technology to almost use it as an MRI machine to scan where mineral pockets will be before they drill. So then that saves native land, saves national parks, and what have you.
Yeah, to make it simpler, when I first talked to him, I was like, what do we draw here? Because I don't know what the science behind this is, but essentially there's these particles that come from space called muons, and muons settle into the earth through the earth's infrastructure, so the stones, the dirt, and this company has recognized how to scan that particle particularly. So you imagine how MRIs work on the human body. Their device MRIs the whole earth, but scans these particles that has like synced into the earth. So now they're able to track texture under the earth. So that's them. And so those all sort of feed into that idea of how we went from doing sort of consumer electronics into these like really big sort of industry shifting paradigms. And that's a little bit of a playground. And then now it leads into our last pillar, which is what we're doing currently, and we're hoping to do more of, but just making time for it, design under the influence. And for this event, we filmed a third episode, which no one's seen before. And we just wanted to give everyone a snippet of what it looks like, the new look and feel, and sort of our new studio space as well. So have a look.
Well, yeah. Hey, sir, what are we drinking? Oh, to good health. I think that's hard.
Hi, my name is Henry Wu. I'm originally from Taiwan. Currently, I live in San Francisco. I'm a product designer by day, fashion photographer by passion. I'm also the founder and editor-in-chief of Tumi Magazine. Growing up, I've always been surrounded by creativity. My dad was an antique trader, and my aunt was a jewelry designer. With my dad, I was able to learn about form and aesthetic and beauty. And with my aunt, I was able to see her transform a simple sketch idea into a product. And that's how I learned about colors, finishes, and even materials of jewelry. And it's because of them that we're going to create a space. And now I'm going to spend my time capturing beauty through product design and photography. To me, design is personal. It embodies who you are as a person and a designer. There's also expressions for you to use your creativities and craft to build something of your own. With design, I was able to add personalities to all my projects and make it interesting and fun and captivating. It's the same thing for photography as well. It's opportunities for me to share a story and capture emotions through images. I'm Henry, and this is Design on the Lab.
That's a snippet of design under the influence and sort of the way we like to work today. And it's kind of captured everything we love to do now is branding, storytelling, video work, marketing content, like all those things have accumulated to this moment.
I think for us, when we were thinking about what's next for us, when we left our day jobs at the studio, we were thinking, the next big thing is maybe we create a studio ourselves. But that idea quickly became boring for us. And we thought, hey, maybe the next thing is to create a show, and not just a podcast, but something that we could bring our friends, our idols, our teachers, our influences on, and discuss ideas and discuss their techniques and their lessons and their history.
So if you want to drink and hang out with us, let us know. So this leads to our second part of the presentation, less vain, less about us and more about inspiring you guys and how to do design. So we figured how to teach you how to design for dummies, because it should be simple. We're just joking. But to preface this section, we really want to think about sort of the education that we had. And this took a while for me to realize that, like, I spent so much time thinking about me as a tastemaker, as an artist, as a person who is technically savvy. But I think we then missed the opportunity to remember that we should be true observers of this space. And so as we go through this section, think about being an observer and not an art maker. And what's been really impactful for us in our process of design is that we need to understand that like we aren't just this one piece, single piece in this Venn diagram, that we just aren't people who choose materials and aesthetics, and we're just not the person who thinks about the skin job of a product. It's really about thinking about every aspect of a business. Similar to some of the examples we talked through, like Velo, you know, really what is that storytelling aspect? How do you shift the narrative? So you, as a designer, it's really important to really balance the idea of what is the art, the science, and the business behind the projects that you're doing. And so this slide, we're happy to share with you guys, but it's quite impactful to remember. And then with that, we want to break this section into 3 mini sections. And some of these, you know, we've experienced as sort of misconceptions in our work, or just like training that we had that we've had to untrain. So these are some perspectives that we picked up along the way, and we hope it's helpful for you. So the first section is really about this idea of like, where do ideas come from? And for us, for a long time, we kept thinking about like, it's really intimidating. Like my first job was at Amazon, and when they gave me, when they hired me, they offered me the job on the spot, and they said, how much do you want to make and when do you want to start? And I was so intimidated at that point because I was afraid that like I had to create something from nothing, and I was this young kid. So I emailed them back and I said, hey, can you just give me an internship instead, and I'll try it for 3 months. It was the stupidest move I have ever made, because I thought that I had to make something from nothing, and it's really intimidating. So hopefully this story will resonate for you. But if we all recognize this painting, it's the girl with the pearl earring. But what we don't recognize is around the same era, there's this man that created the telescope named Galileo. And when Galileo was creating the telescope, concurrently across the world, there's these people in Egypt that was using the same technology, lenses, mirrors, to create this thing called a camera obscura. Essentially, it's a projector. But what they were doing is they were projecting images, and people were tracing over it, or they're using it as entertainment. And what we want to point out is like, when we're creating, we're not really creating something from nothing, but we're really observing the world around us and the technology around us and people around us, and how do we bring those stories together. And this example is really about lenses and mirrors. And so if you really look pre-1600, people were painting like this. You know, we could get into the semantics and details about like the talent, and you know, same with designers. Some of us draw really well, some of us don't, some of us trace, some of us take photos and edit. But there is this shift where people are painting flat, and then people are painting 3-dimensionally. But 3-dimensionally was just an assist of this technology using mirrors and lenses. And this here is an example of the camera obscura, where this person has no technical skills, and they use this to paint a portrait of a person, and that's the result that they got. So when you look at that, we think about our jobs as designers is to be observers, to think about everything that exists around us, and try to bring those things together. And you could imagine sort of the roadmap there for what you just saw, from a simple Galileo telescope to all these different devices that we could use in our daily lives. So with that, maybe that will inspire you not to take an internship and just take a damn job. So this last image is also very important, right? Like I think as a designer, sometimes I push myself away from technology because I'm nostalgic of the past. I'm like, I'm a hardcore paper and pencil person. But I think it's okay to adopt technology and really use things like cameras or use things like the iPad or use technology to show art in a different perspective. And that's sort of the inspiration we want to bring forward to you for this section. So, again, design isn't asking you to make something from nothing. Be a mirror of our time and think about how you do that. This section is on ideas and execution. There's a quick audio clip we want to play for you. And I think we all suffer from this, is around like paralysis by analysis. I don't know if it played. There's supposed to be a piece of audio there.
Of the creative process, a process which, as anybody who has ever tried to make something, which is to say, as basically everyone here knows, does not always behave rationally, and in fact can sometimes feel downright paranormal. I had this encounter recently where I met the extraordinary American poet Ruth Stone, who's now in her 90s, but she's been a poet her entire life. And she told me that when she was growing up in rural Virginia, she would be out working in the fields, and she said she would like feel and hear a poem coming at her from over the landscape. And she said it was like a thunderous train of air, and it would come barreling down at her over the landscape. And when she felt it coming, because it would like shake the earth under her feet, she knew that she had only one thing to do at that point, and that was to, in her words, run like hell. And she would like run like hell to the house, and she'd be getting chased by this poem. And the whole deal was that she had to get to a piece of paper and a pencil fast enough so that when it thundered through her, she could collect it and grab it on the page. And other times she wouldn't be fast enough, so she'd be like running and running and running, and she wouldn't get to the house, and the poem would like barrel through her, and she would miss it. And she said it would continue on across the landscape, looking, as she put it, for another poet. And
how many of you guys have seen ideas come out and you said, fuck, I thought of that, and I should have made millions of dollars for that? It happens all the time. And I think the earlier and the faster you realize that's okay, I think the better your lives will be. This has happened to me many times in my career. But I think the lesson here is just, things will happen when it needs to happen. Allow that creative energy to just, enable you to do what you need to do. So a good example of this is when I was interviewing for Playground, and my first interview with Andy Rubin, because he's the person who created Android, he was like, how do you think about cell phones in the future, or how should we build a cell phone? Because at the time he was building a new cell phone company. And my answer at the time, and a lot of my projects are based on sort of interactions with people and sort of my feelings around those user experience. And so my initial reaction was like, hey, I think just texting is bad at the time. And this is 2014. I said, I'm having trouble getting sarcasm through, and I'm having trouble getting anger through, and I'm having trouble communicating joy. If we could somehow manipulate a chat thread in terms of understanding the word combination, language that I'm using, and have it evolve in a way that it shows I'm angry or excited or happy. Let's build this into the next phone. Innovation isn't about making more cameras, more screens. It's about creating better user experiences. And he thought that was a great idea, and we just tabled it. No one ever thought about that. Fast forward to today, we have this behavioral engineer now in 2023. I was talking to him about the same story, and he said, holy shit, in 2018, I have a professor at UCLA that was dealing with this. He was dealing with how people think about behaviors and experiences, and how does that adapt into our texts. And he was hired by Apple to develop that for their texting experience. And that turned into slamming celebration balloons, turned into all these new effects. And so that's one of the examples of an idea that I thought, and we could have made money off of it. And I blame On for not pushing that through. But this doesn't mean it ends, right? Like the best story about this is we are seeing a new era of AI come through. We're seeing an era of Chat GPT. We're seeing all these new AI tools that are going to be integrated. And this is it. This is, you don't have to physically enter a slam or happy birthday anymore. We're going to start to analyze our experiences, and it's going to naturally show through those types of experiences. So if any of you are out there who are inspired, maybe build a chat thing, sell it to Apple or Google, cut me some money. So with that said, exactly what the Rootstone story is, right? That is, look for a creator, don't miss it. If an idea begs you to produce it, please produce it. It doesn't matter what it is, just produce it in your own perspective, and that's all that matters, or else it'll move on to the next person. And you're gonna be like, I miss millions of dollars. And then here's the last one. I'll give it to
The last section is really about reframing stories and looking at it and delivering it under a different lens. For us, often the technology that we deal with in our day-to-day lives, it's very complex technologies. But how do we make it more palatable for other humans and consumers? Is often when we deal with rocket ships, we don't sell the technology of, oh, these nuts and these bolts and these wings and these things. We sell the image and the feeling of life in space, the beauty and the emotions that someone could capture and feel. And that's a part of branding. But for bioengineering, it could be very complex, but we sell this vision of a cancer-free world. And to continue with that, just to leave you guys with a real-world example here is a genome sequencing company that recently unstealed, that we had a part in working with. And when we were doing the research, a lot of the messaging was very complex and it was very intimidating. And genome was such a scary topic. This was when genome sequencing costed around that, $10,000 to $15,000 per genome to be sequenced. And this company that we work with, they're creating genome sequencing solutions for $100, and eventually it'll be $10. But we helped them distill their message down. We studied the market, and we designed a device that isn't white and isn't plain and doesn't look like a printer. And this was the result of one of the design exercises. And earlier, when we mentioned being a jack of all trades, you see Hoang and I working on everything. So the complex messaging that you see all the other companies have, we trimmed it down to 3 words: human genome decoded. We work on packaging, we work on product. How do we create a product that feels not like a white printer that's in the lab, but something that feels relevant, that feels familiar, that feels like it could be in a trendy home office space? How do we create lighting status symbols that could display in a more unique way that is friendly or exciting, and just branding elements that overall are a bit more playful for a space that is so serious and so techy?
Yeah, just to quickly add to that too is I think the storytelling aspect was the one that I really loved most about this project. Is like, when you think about decoding something complex, that inspired sort of how do you think about the logo as well, putting it in sort of mathematical brackets, really thinking about unjumbling a word mark and really bringing them together, decoding it. And so for us, it's really about that arc there, right? It's like the geekiness, the detail, every little detail about the storytelling added together, it becomes sort of this rich experience. And that's with them. So with that, how to be a great designer for dummies is these 3 points. And if you do that, you could get a job anywhere. Thanks. Hopefully that was helpful.
So now we're going to open the floor up for questions, guys. Yes, any questions? To begin with.
Hello. You kind of briefly mentioned about how to design and like the process, especially for the genome one about like, making the design. So do you want to briefly talk about story? Like what did you learn from your experience about like crafting stories? Any like highlights or takeaways, like similar, like you seem to have a few for design. But for stories, what are those highlights? And so
Let's see, maybe.
Good question.
Yeah, it's a really good question.
I don't have an answer.
So, so for me, let me see. Often I feel like in our day-to-day, Hoang and I deal with a lot of scientists. It's every investment that Playground makes is a new category. So I feel almost like we're jumping into the deep end with every project that we're working on. But at the same time, these companies are also pitching to VCs to get funding for the next round. And believe it or not, VCs are also hearing a lot of these things for the first time. And at the end of the day, communication is made through feelings, emotions, imagery, all these sensory things. And that's what we deal with on a day-to-day basis. We tell stories through images, through text, through just mapping things together to make things palatable. And believe it or not, well, to give you an idea is often these founders, these very technical scientific founders give us piles of data, and it's our job to distill it down to a story that's easy to understand. So for instance, there's a company that deals with processing, that deals with all the stuff that's happening with all the AI things. And they want to build, say, example, a slide for their pitch deck for their next round of funding. And they're explaining to me all these things that they do. And I'm telling them, think of an iconic situation, one iconic situation that we could really highlight that will tell your whole story. So we created one slide, and all it had to say was every time you type in ChatGPT, you press enter, that power that is consumed can power 60,000 houses. That, you know, the power of storytelling, instead of making 80-page document to show you these technical aspects, you just tell them, you press enter, 60,000. That's how much power this thing consumes. Did any of you know that? You know, like that's storytelling.
It's a good question. Thank you. I building on that, On said this before too, and we say it to clients a lot too, is like you only get one chance to tell for first impression. And that's how we always open our meetings, is like, let's build the best first impression, because you don't have a second. You know, sometimes you do because humans are forgiving, but you know, you try to push that. So try to build a really great first impression. And then, yeah, that's it, period. Thanks for your question.
So this is a question from somewhere in the interweb. How do you use what you learned in your design education and early careers to evolve your process to be able to tackle projects at Playground that feel almost larger than life?
Thanks for that question. It's good question as well. Be humble, be honest with yourself. I find it humbling to be in rooms with people who are way smarter than me. I question it when I'm in a room where I'm the smartest person. Feel okay with saying, I don't know what you're talking about. Can you explain it again? And oftentimes that's the best way to build that relationship. And oftentimes that like yields the best result for us, I feel like. But to give you more of a method for that question, I would say, you know, everything that you've developed here at CCA or in your design career, remember those are all pieces of your toolbox. And there's never sort of this linear path to how you design. sometimes you'll need to use certain tools for certain projects. And, you know, storytelling is one, you know, different types of brainstorming is others. And sometimes just being fully immersed in sort of the science, you know, a lot of the life science stuff that we invest in, honestly, I break out a biology book and a chemistry book. And I'm like, what am I, you know, Gattaca, what is the DNA structures? Like those things, you just have to get fully immersed. Like we would never think about decoding a logo if we never like got immersed.
We'd also never work on a genome sequencing company that's valued at 4 to 5 billion if we never started working on designing logos at some point. We started off as IG students here. We took a chance to try designing things for fun for people. And slowly we built that experience to do it here at Playground now. It's a series of fuck ups, but you get better after a while. It also allows you to be a better creative director down the road. If you take photos before you're better at reviewing photos. If you've designed logos, you're better at designing logos. If you know, whatever you work on just makes you better. But to add on to what Hoang is saying, I think looking through the lens of always learning versus being an expert, because an expert doesn't learn anymore.
I think we had classes together like about a year. It's really great circle that you guys come back and teach us. I was listening to you talk about the design process a little bit, where you had 3 circles, and back in the old days, you guys were here with a little bit more, picking materials and figuring out a form and making it pretty and throwing it over the wall a little bit, right? So now you said, you know, learn to see, which is great. The term we've been using around here a little bit is like also a sense, but like listen carefully to the problem, kind of process, synthesize, digest, and then narrate, right? At the end, it's the narration. So, so did you guys, which I think is pretty similar to what you guys are doing, right? So did that new process come because of the type of work that you were doing, the type of problems that you were working on? So is that where that transition came, or was it sort of learning over time and we all started figuring out things a little bit differently? And then, okay, if that was taking a step back and saying, okay, we just had to take a step back and look at the problem more broadly, what are we missing today, right? Do we need to take another step back? Have we really become enlightened, or? That's a lot to ask. I think I'll stop there.
Hard question. Let him take it.
Thanks for those questions. I think I counted 5. No, I think there's like 2 solid ones around sort of shifting the narrative around just aesthetics to sort of a bigger picture. And I'll answer that first. I think just through our career and the studio level at the being in-house in the corporate level, just having the feeling of not having a seat at the table, just knowing that you are sort of one element in sort of this big puzzle of production and developing something, and realizing that we were just artists and just giving skin jobs was frustrating for me personally. So being able to sort of formulate a plan around like, what is the method to kind of scale design, to be a little bit more impactful, to have a seat at the table, to make decisions around, you know, the human experience, because the disconnect of I'm going to just add aesthetic is not enough. And that, I think that led me to sort of think about that Venn diagram. And, you know, the same way as once you start working with in the consultancy level, you will realize owners, founders will have a say in design, and sometimes they'll design for you. So why can't you do business for them? So that's the short answer for me.
I think for us, not to throw any shade at design, the consultancy, like we came from consultancies where when I left, I had already designed 15 pairs of headphones. And to me, it's how many more pairs of headphones, how many more laptops and consumer electronics can we create? And it's almost like a mid or quarter or third or whatever life crisis it is. You run into the same thing with design. It's how can I add more value? What can I do to make change or contribute to how people live, see, use, eat things, and not just creating more excess.
Yeah. I don't know if those answers kind of are combined. I feel like just the idea of stepping back and kind of expanding to the storytelling and capturing that as well. I think that's the second question. And I think that kind of leads, also merges into the last question previously around sort of like, how do you integrate your process together? And I think it's intimidating to say like, be a jack of all trades, fucking do everything all at once at the same time. If we did that today, graduating, it would be destructive. We started as industrial designers. We Yvon Chouinard said it best for Patagonia, right? Like I learn everything 80% efficiency. Anything beyond that is like elite level. You don't need that. Get to like 60% efficiency, continue to move on, always expand, always grow. And you'll get to a point where you're able to see a project at many perspectives. And that's the most important thing, is the storytelling aspect and being able to see a project at vantage points. And that's how you become sort of design director levels, right? Because you start to understand how all those pieces work.
Here's a question from the web. What was your most challenging project and how did you overcome the obstacles you faced?
Damn, this is a hard one because, I feel like this, I'll probably give a stupid answer, but I feel like every project I work on is very intimidating and it's very complex. Like the 4 that we shared with you, it's agriculture, it's space, it's mining, it's genome sequencing. Every category has been a different sector. There's a huge focus right now on decarbonization, which I think is rightfully so. And with it is, I think, just trying to be a sponge and listening and learning and bringing my skills and my knowledge as a creative individual and try to mesh somehow. But I feel like that's my answer. Every project brings a different challenge. But it's my attitude that I'm willing and excited to jump in, even though I'm scared. I think that's the important part for me.
I would say probably the toughest project is Anna sitting here in the audience, but she runs a company called Linus, the smart vibrator company that builds data around women's health. And you can imagine how complex, how intimidating. Shout outs to women all over for the International Women's Day. But I took a backseat. We said, I don't know anything about anything. And to be humble there and to really just say, like, let's learn the language here and understand how to build a brand succinctly and correctly, and a product that works for women, was probably one of the challenging projects for me.
Thank you for being here. I'm sure it speaks for everyone when I really appreciate your time, your insight, and all of the inputs. I think the fact that the two of you are so multifaceted and come from such like diverse backgrounds, where you are not just white men in this field, but you know, you are people of color. You know, you have a diverse heritage, your parents are immigrants or potentially also refugees. So the space that you occupy, like within design and within what you do and all that you touch and influence is very important, because you're operating in a space which has historically been really kind of catered to like the perspective of like, you know, white, predominantly like male influence. So as you are designing under the influence, how do you kind of carry forward that responsibility, like that point of view, where you don't just storytell, you know, to problem solve, to you know, kind of inspire with design, also to storytell, but also to impart like personal things and like historical, cultural, like diverse point of views within that space and within that problem solving. And then how do you make space for others? I see so many like diverse faces in this room, you know, people that come from all over the world, and they too should have like a say and a role and a space within design and storytelling. So how do you make way so it's easier for those people to contribute and to also, you know, find their kind of place in where you currently are?
Thank you for your question. That was a really good question around diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm sorry for the comment about the white men dominating the industry for so long. No, I'm kidding. There for a while, industrial design particularly was that. It was a lot of European male, and I think to the same point as I brought up Anna's Linus, it's that it's like representation matters. Being able to be someone that the younger Vietnamese kid could look up to and say, here's a roadmap to how I could become a designer is like enough of a goal to have. And I think that's big enough. Anything. And then with that, I think that's honestly the main reason why we wanted to do design under the influence, is that it's like we have so many, as you guys saw the story of Henry, is like there's so many talent. You guys are talented too. Everyone here we would love you to be on the show, but it's like there's so many people who are doing something extraordinary. And there's this thing in design where it's kind of this esoteric space where we feel like it's kind of this guarded and kind of elitist space where you have to get training to be able to be well at design. We want to break that mold by not having a show where it's like you have this button-up designer, it's wearing probably all black, and that's just kind of serious and has this kind of already pre-made pitch about themselves. We wanted to get them fucked up and have fun. I'm just kidding, excuse my language. We want to just hang out and talk about who they are as a true designer and what inspired them in the stories that brought them here to this space and day. So we're hoping that that's the way we'll do it. And, you know, it's the same way as we presented the Oreo story in the beginning. We love to troll people. We like to have fun, and it all comes together there. That answer it? I think.
We also work a lot with schools and design collectives and digital education platforms and things. And we've actually have made, I'd say like 6 or 7 trips down to Mexico to teach and work with students down there. We regularly connect with Vietnamese designers And I would say those are some of the most exciting times of my design career. Is really, I feel like here in America, design is very different, and working with students, especially on our trips in Mexico, their sense of design is a lot more human centric, and it's very like touchy feely. It's very artisan. It's very craft. It's very deep into the emotions, which I tend to like a lot. But yeah, we work with a lot of students. We mentor a ton. Email us. We'll get back to you. So I don't know. Hopefully that helps.
You guys talk a lot about yes and confidence in terms of you have the first job, you take the job, you have not been the smart person, it's okay. So something that you do, as well as being confident in coming up with a different perspective to something and having a unique voice. I think I'm curious. There's a bit of a privilege of success where you are able to say other things that as a younger designer you might not feel comfortable doing. So instead of this kind of yes, jump in and do it, how, when, and where would you encourage younger designers to feel confident saying no to a project or drawing line or being confident not taking something or not just jumping into something so much you get
for me, I have built a perspective to think in this way where I tell my friends all the time, you meet your destiny on the path you took to avoid it. So I feel like these days, I wish I knew that earlier. But let me see, how do I answer this structurally? Working now backwards is my lens for accepting projects back then would be no for now, because in one of our examples in our DUI show was we took on Costco, and they were a constant stream of projects nonstop. And it was a great revenue stream where things just kept coming and we kept saying yes, 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 yes. And that's a great client, but we kept saying yes, even when we weren't ready. And because we weren't ready, we lost them as a client. And that fucked up a lot for us. But the lesson there was that, like, if you're not ready, say no for now. And it's okay, because other things will come. Your destiny you'll meet it no matter what path you take. And I've come to a point in my life where I accept that. And whether I get a project or not, it's fine. I just move on to the next one because it wasn't meant for me. No regrets.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking. I still stand by sort of the yes mentality, only because failing forward is really important for me. It's you learn through failing and through your experience. And like this presentation was pretty buttoned up, but there's hundreds of projects where we've screwed up on. And those are where you learn your biggest lessons. And the younger and the earlier, the faster you fail and say yes to projects and learn from them, the faster you get to where you want to be, I would say. So don't avoid it. It's the same way as, meddling on a project when it was in your head. Same as the Ruth Stone example, the idea will slip you and go to the next. So execute.
Yeah. I mean, in a sense, the way we screwed up Costco, I wouldn't do that again, So
yeah, Costco came back. No.
So this is a special question. This is howdy. This is from Jimmy. I apologize if I'm butchering that name. From Vietnam. And this is a three-part question. One, what gave the brothers inspiration to be an industrial designer? That's one. Two, How did your family support you jumping into this uncommon occupation? And three, which is probably the most important one in this room, what advice do you have for the younger generation?
Sure. So our first generation immigrants and our parents are refugees. They were in Indonesia. They fled Vietnam in the middle of the night, was at a refugee camp in Indonesia, and eventually my family split parts to the West Coast and part to the East Coast. So growing up, a lot of very weird things happen on an economical scale. We would see our dad putting together microwaves with multiple parts just because that's all we could afford. We would he would go to Goodwill and he would pick up 2 or 3 microwaves, and one would have a handle, or I don't know. I always try to think back and wonder how we got into design, but since our earlier days, we would see a microwave with a different handle, but a different plate on the inside. And then we'd see a washer with a different, door, and then a different tumbling thing on the inside. And ever since our earlier days, we would see our dad tinkering with random things, a radio with multiple antennas from some random antenna, just because that's all we could afford, is mass together a bunch of different things. And I feel like maybe that planted a seed in us of being technical kids who or had an interest for hardware.
Building onto that, also there was sort of a monumental moment in high school where I met Jason Maiden. He was the director of Jordan at Nike at the time. And I met him by accident. One of my girlfriend's tutor, though, was his wife, and he came to our class and presented his portfolio and presented industrial design. And at that time, we had no idea what that was. And I showed him my work. At the time, I was just really fascinated about design, but I wasn't sure what industrial design was. I had an architectural portfolio. I went to technical school, so they were teaching us AutoCAD, and we were, building houses for Habitat for Humanity at the time. And Jason saw my portfolio and he's like, dude, why you're not even building the house, you're designing trash cans and chairs and like objects. You should look into industrial design. So he wrote me a letter of recommendation, and that set me on sort of this path of design. And I was lucky enough to have someone like that sort of show me a North Star. And so fast forward to graduation, and now at Playground, Jason left New York, or not New York, it's Nike, and he's now in the Bay Area, and he started his own company, the Super Heroic Shoe Company. And this is the same time we started at Playground, and he reached out and he was like, how have you been? Haven't seen you in a while. Would you like to build a company with us? I was like, we just took on the job, but happy to do storytelling, branding, etc. Did the work for him. Literally like 2 weeks later, he came back, showed us packaging, showed us the shoes, showed us the branding, showed us everything. Was like, I'm ready to ship. I was like, Jesus, just because you're at Nike, you have all this connection to build this brand so fast. And so we met secretly at Playground. If anyone on Playground is listening, sorry. We met in a boardroom in the back in Playground, went over his stuff, kind of talked about what we loved about it, and kind of talked through how to expand that. And on the way out, we're like, you know what? We'll introduce you to the investment team at Playground. Introduce him to the investment team at Playground. Turns out the head of investment went to college with Jason way back in the day. No idea. A week later, maybe 2 weeks later, they invested $7 million into his company. And for me, that was sort of this full circle where it's like he helped me. I was able to give back, and now we're working together in the same place, building companies. That was the story of how I kind of got into design, and kind of having these kind of role models and people who pointed me in the right direction. There was like 3 questions, but I think that it's good enough.
Yeah, I'm getting pushed away here. We're kind of running out of time in regards to the presentation. So we're going to do one last question from the web. What's a lesson you've learned from criticism or intended interpretation of your work?
Good question. Opinions like asshole, everyone has one. Just kidding. Criticism, let me see. I feel like take a deep breath and soak it in because it's a lesson to learn. I don't know, criticism really hurts, but I think it's a chance and an opportunity to learn and grow. So I welcome it because it almost like sharpens the blade a little bit. I'm not sure that's a quick, cheap answer.
A lesson we've learned with, I would say, throughout your career, intention matters. And if you drive with intention, it's the most important thing, no matter what people say. And if you get distracted by opinions, it's going to be bad. One example is exactly to your question is, design under the influence is just for us to bring people together, talk, and, the intention is great. And someone thought someone thought to make the narrative of it being a poor excuse for happy hour for us two dudes to meet women. And I thought that was the worst call out ever. So intention matters at the end of the day, and it doesn't matter what people think. Thank you.
Yeah, one last thing to add to that, and Swang is talking about intention, is I think always staying true to yourself down the road, no matter what. You'll be okay because you know that at the moment you gave it your all, you were true to yourself, and you were honest to your abilities. Thank you.
All right, on that note, we want to give a big hand to the brothers. Anything else you want to say regarding the company or anything for the students before we go?
Thanks for having us. It's really important to sort of give back. I think the one thing we lack is we've taken from sort of all the lessons we've learned, and we try to give back as much as we can. So this is a great opportunity to kind of bring back sort of the lessons we've learned and sort of accelerate everyone's kind of growth in design by learning from our mistakes. But also, I brought this up to David and Ian before in our conversations. It's like, the playground is a really awesome place. And for any of the students that are not just industrial design, people who are thinking about building businesses, building ideas, thinking about the future, we always want to have we have happy hours every Thursday from 4 to 6. Happy to welcome anyone to come there. But, we do projects with students, and we do open up our facilities to think about how do we grow together? How do we collaborate? How do we use our shop? We have a really great shop. And we've done projects with the Boys and Girls Club. So happy to have those kind of discussions with people at CCA or any other disciplines. And we may not have the time, or we may ignore you until you email us and say it's a $900 million opportunity, but just try anyways.
And a lot of the stuff that we shared with you today feels like point Z, but there's A, B, and C that happens in between. We're an open book. The playground people watching, fine. We share, and we're happy to walk some of the students through our process and show you how we came to certain points. Like it may seem complex, it may seem crazy, but we can walk you through and teach you how we do things.
Thank you.